Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you tuning in on All Access Live. I want to thank my sponsors at Five Star Guitars. Five Star is based in Beaverton, Oregon, which means that if you're a guitarist, you want to buy anything online, you're going to save because there's no sales tax in Oregon. And if you use the link below by going to fivestarguitars.com/all access live, there's a promo code of all access 15. It's going to save you 15% on top of that discount. Can't beat that. And hopefully, if you learn to play guitar and you get pro lessons and repairs from those guys, then you might be talented enough to join a band like my next guest. They are, I would consider, to be the original alt rockers from the 80s. You probably know their song "Anything, Anything," but songs like "Last Cigarette" certainly put them on the map as well. I've got some former members, or actually the original members. I've got John Easdale and Mark Engler right here, guys. I'm so glad to see you. There's Mark. There's John. What's happening, gents?
Hey, I got a question. So, do you have any? What's a good contact information for a guitar teacher? Because I've been thinking
Yeah.
about a lesson.
You need to take. You're going to take some lessons, Mark.
I'm thinking of it. I got the beginner Mel Bay's book there.
Surprisingly enough, Jennifer Batten of Jeff Beck and Michael Jackson fame actually teaches virtually through that Five Star Guitars. So if you want to, get your two-handed tapping stuff down for the next Dramarama gig,
I could learn some information on that.
there you go. Yeah. Oh, he's getting a guitar right now. We're gonna do a little.
Guitar. Why? Where's a guitar? I don't know. Where's a guitar?
I like.
So
Yes.
they do lessons, or they do retail too.
They do everything: repairs, lessons. They've got. It's really cool. About a month ago, I had Eddie Van Halen's guitar tech on the show. On this show, he went to Five Star Guitars there in Beaverton. He did an all-day setup. He could show how you can set up a guitar like Eddie or anybody else. He did a couple of demo setups, and they've got Eddie's original Kramer, the yellow Frankenstein, I believe, on auction at that place right now. So he had some crazy stories, Van Halen stories that are awesome. But so I've got a chat happening on the sidebar, and I don't know if you see this, but I see that Scott V had just asked where Tony Snow is. So I will say, guys, first of all, if you're watching this on anything else other than YouTube, do me a favor, okay? There's a link right here that I'm going to put up. Go to youtube.com/all access live with Kevin Rankin. I would love it if you'd subscribe, hit the little bell. You can go back and look at 210 episodes that I've done since the beginning of the pandemic. And then you can catch the rest of this where we can talk about the other members that aren't here on camera. Some of these guys have to actually fulfill obligations to pay a mortgage. So Tony Snow, Mike Davis, they can't be here right now, but as you guys know, that rhythm section is one of my favorites. I love them. And so this gives us an opportunity to just heckle and talk shit about them while they're not here. So yeah. It looks like this. It looks like Peter's trying to call in. So let's see if we can do, well, I'm not going to let him into this call. If you're watching this, Peter Wood, he is trying to get into this chat. So I'm going to send him a link in a second, but before we do, I wanted to ask you guys really quick about something that he's trying to call in again. So here, let me see if I can share the screen here. We'll bring him on camera. All right, this is great. Hey Peter, hang on one second. Oh look, I got Mike Davis too. Look at this. All right, so let's see. I
I know those dudes.
It says that it doesn't support, but actually it probably does. And so what I'm not sure, let me just see here if everyone can see. Oh yeah, we've got we can still see Mark and John. So we've almost got the whole band. We're just missing Tony Snow. I know he's working right now. So while you guys are here, and Mark's there. Yep, he's over on the sidebar over there. So there's some okay, hold on a second. I'm trying to make sure that we get all screens shared equally here. There we go.
You have them on mute, huh? Are they on mute or are they able to?
No, they're not muted. John, you can hear him, right?
I can't hear Peter or Michael.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna have to relay this. So I'm gonna tell Peter and Mike, they can't hear you guys because you're calling in through the Messenger app. There is that link for our share here. If you're able to dial in on that one using any browser, even okay, and
Hey, Mickey, we're browsers. Look at this.
yeah, and Peter, they can't hear what you're saying, so you can say all sorts of crazy stuff about them right now, and Mike's gonna try and call in. Um, Thomas Justice, he says, can't wait to see you guys in the 80s cruise. So we were talking about that kind of stuff a little bit, right? That's March. So that's a ways out. Between now and March, there are a handful of gigs that we've all got to do together. And I will say, man, one of my favorite things is that when we all get together, especially during the Lost 80s live gigs, um, it's like a family reunion, right? And so for this show, I kind of feel like if we're not backstage, we're not hanging out at the gigs, then it's an opportunity for us. Yeah, well, I think you guys are on the Greek Theater show on September 3rd, correct?
We
All right.
are.
Yeah.
All right,
But we've been playing shows with you, Kevin, since 2004, if I'm not mistaken.
dude.
We did those Nike shows.
That's right, man. When I was with Animotion, right? So we did gigs. I've got a bunch of footage of you guys from House of Blues, Anaheim, and Sunset, I believe. And yeah, so I was just going to answer some questions for people at the Greek. If you guys are planning on going to the Greek, they are really meticulous. They're really stringent about making sure that everybody is not only vaccinated, but they also have masks or they've got a COVID test within 72 hours of the show. So I am grateful for. Nope. Yeah, Peter, the other guys in the band can't hear your heckle there, so it's yeah, but yeah, no, they're here. But I love the fact that they're really being precautious about this. And so if you guys are fans, like Rick Converse, he says he's going to see us at the Greek. If you guys are sort of wary about coming out to a show right now, I will tell you that they're doing absolutely everything they can to make sure that people are they're protected and the bands are protected, the crew's protected. So I would think.
Can I add something to that too?
Yeah.
I was just at the Greek. I just saw King Crimson out there. Yeah, I was in the audience. I was surrounded by people that were unmasked, but I double mask. So I mean, it can be done.
Yep.
Just be careful. That's all.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So Peter, Mark was just saying he was down at the Greek and he saw King Crimson. He double masked. People are wearing masks. This may be hard for me to relay back and forth between two screens of you guys talking. So Peter, do me a favor. If you can, try and hit that link and see if you can come back in so that you can join us on this other screen. Okay, you got it. And if it says it's not supported, don't believe it. And
we support you, Peter. We support you. You can do it, man.
And I'm going to mute you on the messenger for a second. All right. So, Peter, hit the link that's. Yeah, no, don't do that. Go above that, find Restream, and hit the link I sent. There you go. Hit it, put your name in, and join the chat. Allow.
Come into the light, Carolyn.
I'm muting him now because he's yeah. Well, no, it's okay. Go ahead and hit it anyway. Even though it says it's not supported, just hit it. It'll let you in, right? Join. Yep. I'm gonna hang us up on Messenger. Ready? It'll get you in there. I'm hiding him now. So, okay, while he joins, okay, yep, you got it. I'm gonna stop sharing that. Okay, John.
Yes, sir.
Let me. I was doing some research on one of your backstage requests, something that I've known about you for sure since 2004. But does the tab thing go all the way back to the beginning?
No. I switched. I used to drink Coca-Cola, but I switched to no sugar sodas. So at that point, it was tab or nothing. Diet Coke. Everybody drinks Diet Coke. I was
That's for Quakers.
I was drawn to tab from when I was a kid. Grandma used to have it in her refrigerator, and I was shocked to see that it was still in the soda aisle. So and we were playing these '80s shows. So I just thought, what kind of an '80s party would it be if there wasn't tab?
Right.
So I started doing it, and now it's kind of like Groucho has a cigar or whatever. I have my tab, and I do request it. I don't demand it. It's not like I won't go on stage without it, but I always bring a few cans just to make sure that there's some there for me. And now that last year the COVID killed it, and the Coca-Cola company decided to stop making tab. Despite the many letters, cards and letters and telegrams and whatnot that I sent in protest, it didn't work, and they stopped making it. And so now I only have about 100 something cans left. So I have to be very, very sparing. I'm going to save those for shows.
I was gonna say, man, yeah, you've got. Can you order stuff off Amazon or eBay and get the back stock?
I haven't looked at, like, the day that Coca-Cola announced they were going to stop making it. I think you could get like a one can for $5, which was I don't know if that price has gone up or down since then. Because obviously it was in the news, so they were all people were jumping on there, but I don't know now. I'm sure there's a black market or somewhere on the dark web you could.
Right. Oh my God! While you're shopping for like weapons of mass destruction, you can buy some tab.
Let's hope so.
You had back in the day when I was researching it, I found out that was the original diet soda before any other Diet Coke or anything else, and that they had other things like Diet Ginger Ale, Diet Root Beer, Black Cherry back in the day. So I think if we've got some sort of philanthropists out here in the chat, perhaps maybe somebody will start up like a tab version 2. We can because we need that kind of stuff back again, right? We need more important loving like healthy things to think about versus whatever's going on out there in the media, right? So
yeah, I don't know that artificial sweetener is quote unquote healthy.
True, right?
But
yeah.
Actually,
at the same time, neither is sugar.
Yeah, man. I would imagine that not a lot of people that are fans of Dramarama expected us to get into the diet soda conversation. But if you know John Easdale, you know that everywhere he goes, he's either got a can of tab or the pink tennies.
It's part of the show. It really is. It's become a part of the show, and people ask me about it now.
Yeah.
So I started out, I was just drinking it, but now now it's shtick. Like I said, as George Burns has a cigar, I got a can of tab.
That's right. Yeah. How about you, Mark? Are you going to start playing the banjo for your shtick?
It's a prop. Trust me. I haven't picked this thing up in ages. Look how dusty it is. It's just
God, it's like the rest of my drums sitting here, just waiting to be played. But
don't mind me. I got plenty of children. I'm just.
I have a question for you, Kevin. Now,
but
guitar players like Mark have 40 guitars. Do you have 40 drum sets?
I don't. You know what? Until a few years ago, I had one. But when about the time I joined Flock back in 2016, a friend of mine was playing. He's been playing with Alice Cooper for a long time. When he retired his last Mapex drum set, he had this massive spider web thing. There's the bass drums is double bass set, of course. The legs are spider webs. It's a big, like big rack thing. I got his old Alice Cooper kit. So that was
cool.
It was a really cool, sort of unique kit. And then my uncle is a jazz drummer in Chicago, and he just this last year sent me his 1956 Silver Sparkle Gretsch, and that was the kit that he played on since he was a teenager. And
wow,
it's amazing.
That's cool.
Yeah, that is cool, actually.
But I've got 3 kits, and I only play one of them really because I got a beautiful Spawn kit that nobody ever sees when I do the big package case that we did with you guys, because we always have a backline kit, right?
Yeah, so, no, you don't have. That's one good thing. You don't have to carry your gear on those gigs.
That is a beautiful thing. But you know what? With us, we've got the triggers, And while I'm packing up all that stupid electronic stuff, you guys are all signing autographs and getting, like showered with cans of tab and boobies and all that kind of stuff.
Kissing
So,
babies.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, are you guys both in substantial relationships right now?
I just celebrated my 32nd wedding anniversary.
Wow, 32. Congrats, man. That's impressive. What about you, Mark?
Nope. I've been completely alone for like ever.
Hey,
Maybe
well,
maybe a Bigfoot mate somehow. I'll be lucky, but outside of that,
He's a bachelor by choice. Don't let him fool you.
well, look at all this that I could offer someone.
That's well, the reason I asked, man, is that pandemic took a toll on a bunch of relationships, and so if we're going to be back out on the road, perhaps Mark, you'll find a new suitor as we're gracing the stages.
I've been in a relationship with two others, me, myself, and I.
Mm.
That's right.
Yeah, how's the left hand? Of course. Awesome. Man, let's go back to early days of Dramarama, man. Tell me how you guys connected.
Well, Mark lived not next door, but two doors down. There was a house between ours, so we've known each other since we were 3 years old.
No. Serious?
Yeah.
3. Okay.
Right.
I used to knock on his door at I was 4 years old. I'd be pounding on his door, and his mom be saying, "Well, John's asleep. Can you come?"
He would be knocking on the door at 7 a.m. Mark would get up and come over at 7 o'clock in the morning, and I'd still be sleeping. And I still have a vivid memory of going and knocking on Mark's door, and his mother explaining to me that he had gone to kindergarten. And I was like, what's that? What's kindergarten? I didn't know what that was. So when I learned how to dial a rotary dial phone, I learned Mark's number, 839-0131. And that's probably the only phone number I knew for a couple of years, besides my own, 835-2103.
Yeah, I still know that one. I have no idea why I remember that. 201, the area code 201. You remember
more from when you're a kid. You could sing songs from commercials and stuff from when you're little, way better than you can remember stuff that happened last week. It's weird.
You remember, it used to be patterns. That's how you would call. You just remember the pattern on the phone, and that's how you did it.
Well, when it turned to numbers, but originally it was just
right
the rotary dial.
And you hope that everybody's number you had to memorize were really short. They were 1s, 2s, or 3s, because if you had all those zeros, it took so long for the dial to get back around. Take 10 minutes to call. Kids, if you're on the chat right now and you don't know what we're talking about, back in the day, phones had a dial that you had to wait. Anyway, they can look it up.
It was actually a dial. It was round.
Yep.
They called it dialing the phone. Now they call it dialing the phone. There's no dial.
Yeah. Oh, you know what, man? This is great. We got a new celebrity in the chat. One of my favorite people on the planet, Terry Courier, the owner of Music Millennium, the greatest music store, the greatest record store on the planet, right here in Portland. He says he loves the new album. He wants you guys to play Portland. So Terry, by the way, we just had Terry Courier Day. He is essentially the mayor of Portland. He saved live music, I feel like, in Portland in a big way.
Portland always had a big scene, for sure.
Nice.
Yeah, man. So I think
Mark moved to Portland after the band broke up in the 90s. That's where Mark went.
Really?
I was going to make my big thing because I knew how to work independent records, unlike the millions of other bands out there. And look what it's done for me. I'm here. Look all around.
You were up there for a couple of years, weren't you, Marky?
Oh, no, 6 months at the most.
Okay.
Oh, I thought it was longer.
Well,
no, I drove back in the middle of winter in a 1980 Honda Accord. And that's when I realized at that time, hey, this car doesn't have heat. In California, when you buy the car, you don't turn on the heat. So
right.
You need to drive it to a place like Portland, Oregon, where, by the way, I almost broke down on the way back. It's always good, kids, to have a mechanic look at your car before you go.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, thank you, Mr. Courier. We would love to come to Portland. I think it would be you and Kevin and my Uncle Bill lives out there.
I guarantee you've got fans. There are a lot of it's. Oh, of course, I talked to you about you guys being the original alt rockers. You guys don't exactly fit into the whole pigeonholed 80s new wave scene that a lot of those bands we play with do.
We had no synthesizers.
We were never the popular ones in the club growing up.
No, we were, electric guitars, rock and roll.
We were shunned by our neighbors.
Back then, speaking of like modern rock radio, I don't think Portland had a modern rock radio station until probably like the late 80s or the early 90s. When grunge came along, then everybody jumped on the bandwagon. Every city had one. But in like 86, 87, I don't think Portland had a quote unquote modern rock radio station.
I think you're right.
So we're not as well known in Portland or a lot of cities around the country. It's like when we did our bands reunited for VH1, there was like a little chat room, and they were like, "This band, I've never heard of this band, and I know every band from back then. This is a make believe band. No,
Mickey Mouse band."
It was very regional and scattered for us. So I don't know.
Well, you know what? There was a Portlander that put you guys on the Portland map. Storm Large actually played. She sang "Anything" on Rockstar Supernova.
Yes.
In 2006.
That is true.
I was at that taping. Storm's a buddy. I've played with her.
Awesome.
It was incredible. I had no idea she was going to do it. I was there to watch her do her thing, and when she started singing that song, I had just been playing with you. We'd done shows with you guys the last couple of years, and I'm thinking, how did this happen, right? That she picked that song to play, but then she stage dove out in the audience, and it became a huge Portland thing because I think she was playing it live after that too for just some shows because everybody equated her success, with your songs.
Now, isn't she on like The Voice or America's Got Talent or something like?
America's Got Talent, yeah.
Right now?
Yep, she's going through the finals, hopefully. So I to be honest with you, I have never watched one of those shows. I saw her performances, where they've just taken clips, and a really good friend of mine plays drums in the house band, The Voice. So I've gone in and sat behind him and watched him do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't stand TV contest shows like that. Or
it's kind of like karaoke, right? Except you don't need. You don't see the band really. It's like the music comes out of nowhere. It's very strange.
For me, it's like trying to critique art and saying that one artist is better than another. If you're looking at a painting and you can say that Jackson Pollock is better than Warhol, to me, it's so subjective that when you hear an amazing gospel singer and you hear an amazing rock singer and then a amazing lounge singer, they're all great in their own right. And so, it becomes more about what could sell more clicks, and so I just get turned off by a lot of that stuff. It's the same kind of thing with Grammys and Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and all that, but that's just my opinion.
Well,
right? What do I know?
It's weird, I mean, as a fan of music and stuff, I like the real thing, but that's my personal preference. And I know some people love Depeche Mode so much that they love to go see the Depeche Mode tribute band because they want to see those Depeche Mode songs performed live. And Depeche Mode comes around every 5 years and they play at the stadium. And this way they can go somewhere and see, their favorite Depeche Mode songs live in a nightclub, So who am I to condemn that or say, oh, that sucks, So I try never to do that, I try to keep more power. The more people that go to clubs and more people that listen to good music, it's all good.
Honestly, if it weren't for those people, we wouldn't be out doing what we're hopefully doing next week, right?
It's amazing. Actually, the 80s, if you think about it, was a great songwriting decade. It really was. I mean, in some ways, it was much better than the 60s.
It's weird because, it's sad to say, but like in the 21st century, music no longer has the same hold on the public that it did in the 80s or the 70s or the 60s. And even in the 90s, it's like there's some stuff that still resonates, but you don't have that kind of vibe. It's 30 years later and there's not like this big 90s thing, there's a little bit of 90s thing, but not like this 80s thing is just ridiculous, you know, and it's been going almost, 20 years now.
I can't believe that. I mean, really, that is, knock on wood, it keeps going for a while, and I've talked to a lot of people about the 90s thing because the next generation of people, right? We've started to see, I think, 3 generations of people coming out to see these shows, especially like Lost 80s, right? Mm-hmm. You'll see teenagers where the songs have been really popularized by TV shows, Stranger Things and that kind of stuff, plus video games. And then they've got their parents that have introduced them to those songs. And even, if the parents are younger in their 40s, then their parents in their 60s also grew up, really loving the early 80s stuff. So having that 3 generation span is, I think, what kind of helps the longevity of it a little bit more. But, again, who am I to say? But the 90s, if you think about the next generation of people that were really affected by the strong, grunge scene of the Lilith Fair era, right, where you had the Sarah McLachlans and the Alanis Morissettes and that kind of stuff, they were really affected emotionally the way that we were, right, when we were kids, and we watched some music that just completely took hold of us and made us want to do that for a living. Those other, in the 90s, people might not have said, I needed to be on stage, but they felt like they had a voice, somebody that could, they could relate to, somebody that spoke their truth about whatever shitty family household they had or tough childhood experiences. Somebody else spoke their truth and they could relate to it that way. Mm-hmm. And I would imagine there will be a lot of 90s tributes coming out, in the next 5-10 years. And maybe some of these package shows that we've been doing, with 90s music. But you're right, man. Once the millennium changed, if you think about the longevity of music, right? If you think about those iconic songs in 60s, 70s, 80s, and then it kind of stopped, right? I mean, they're the Stairway to Heaven. I can't tell you a song, in the 2000s that will ever, be played in a music store 20 years from now, that everybody's going to, resonate with and say, that song changed my life, unless somebody can, tell me. And I'm not going to say that there aren't great songs right now either, because I think there are some really good artists out there. I debate my singer about that a lot. Mike Scorer and I will have this talk as we're driving thousands of miles, and he's like, there's nothing good out there right now. The last best band was Keane. And I remember having that convo because I saw Pink the night before, and my great buddy plays drums for Pink, and that chick is unbelievable, right?
Actually, it's pretty good. I mean, she really has the heart of a rocker on a lot of that.
Linda Perry is an amazing producer. Yeah. And she's straight up rock and roll,
I didn't know she produced Pink.
Yep.
Yeah, like Four Non Blondes, Linda Perry, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. She's definitely developed her name in the industry. Well, I was getting chatty thinking about that, but let's talk about inspirational bands and artists that you guys saw. Like Mark, if you guys knew each other since you were 3, as a guitarist, did you feel like there was a particular artist or performance that got you and you said, okay, that's my thing?
Well, I mean, there was the song American Pie in the 5th grade with Steve Mercurio on backing vocals there. And the thing that brought the house down was Steve and this guy, Mike Whalen, fist fighting over one microphone that they had in the back, and I had the guitar in the front. That's rock and roll pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, I listen to a lot of Cirrus. And so sometimes it's the 40s, sometimes it's the 60s. 70s. I've listened to the Pearl Jam station. It's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, music in a way, it's never been a better time to discover. But if you're an artist, it might be a little bit more dicey. That's about it.
Who was the first artist that you saw play live? Mark?
Elton John, 1974.
Wow. Okay.
Oh, wow.
That's a biggie.
And you know what sucks about that show? Only one thing sucks. He was at Nassau Coliseum, and he had played Madison Square Garden the night before with John Lennon.
Oh, my
I
God.
missed that show.
Wow.
Oh, so freaking close.
Yeah. Had you seen any other Beatles?
Well, I've seen Paul McCartney.
Have you? Yeah.
And Ringo Starr is another one I've really grown to really appreciate his solo career.
Yeah. He was at the Greek the night before we all did that show last. You remember that? Ringo's All-Star Band was there the night before, and I remember sitting in his seat thinking, oh, this is almost 6 degrees, right?
I saw the Ringo All-Star Band, and it was one of the best concerts I was ever at. It was that year. It was Greg Lake on bass, Roger Hodgson from Supertramp on guitar and piano, Howard Jones also on keyboards, Ian Hunter on rhythm guitar, and Ringo, and Sheila E. was the backup drummer.
Oh, yes.
It's amazing.
So everybody goes off stage. Greg Lake, Howard Jones, and Sheila E. do Carnival number 9 segment, welcome back, my friends. And Howard Jones, you could tell he was like in his bedroom playing all those synthesizer parts, doing all the Keith Emerson stuff, because he nailed it, and Sheila E. nailed it. And it was great. It was an amazingly great show, and Ringo was brilliant. And I don't think I ever had a better time. That was so much fun.
Man, how it's amazing that his all-star band lineups have varied so vastly, like wide, but every single one of them gives me goosebumps to think about. From Lukather, you got Bissonette back there in drums, and that's Mickey Thomas, I think, was singing for a bit on that gig too.
Mm-hmm. He always has Todd Rundgren comes along.
There's a Rundgren connection here too, man. He snagged a keyboardist from here in Portland. This amazing dude, Glasses. His name is Gil Assis, and he goes by Glasses. And he was this internet phenom that just blows my mind. He moved here to Portland from Jerusalem and knew nobody, and just got huge on. He redid this song from NPR's Tiny Desk, and Rundgren said, I want that guy, and picked him up, and now he's the music director on tour. But they've been doing the streaming shows this last year during the pandemic. Did you see the Rundgren stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they would simulate like they're in Portland or they're in Tokyo or Chicago, and they'd have all the backdrops and the whole room set like it's actually at those venues, but they're just shooting it in one location for the entire pandemic, which I think is pretty cool. But how about your original inspiration, John? Where did you decide I need to be a front guy in my own band?
Well, I wanted to be a drummer first and foremost, a drummer who sang. I would have to blame my love of rock and roll on the Monkees, and I was 4 years old when that show came on, and even before the Beatles, I was a Monkees fan, and my first 45 I bought was I'm Not Your Stepping Stone, and
I remember that.
I'm a Believer. And then I got the Monkees' first album, and I just love the Monkees. And then I went from there to the Beatles, and then caught up with the as time went by. Like there was a point where there was a brief moment or a year or so, because I was a drummer, I was really into ELP and Yes, and I tried to play that stuff. I'd put the headphones on and jam to Yes songs or the ELP Live triple album, and I wanted to be a drummer, and I always sang too. But I think Bowie and Mott the Hoople, Ian Hunter, and they kind of turned me on to like songs and singing and songwriting and picking up a guitar and learning how to write songs.
When you were younger, did you really resonate with lyrics? Was that something that you picked up on right away?
Yeah, I definitely did. And again, even when I was learning how to write, like ABC, I was learning how to write the lyrics to the Monkey songs.
Wow.
And I would write the words to the Monkey songs, but I would write, this song by John Easdale, and then write the lyrics. And I remember my mother said, "No, you can't do that. You didn't." But I wrote it. That's me. I wrote that. I wrote those words. She's like, "Yeah, but somebody else wrote that. You can't take credit for it." I'm like, "I'm not taking credit. I did write that. That's my handwriting right there." So yeah, I was definitely drawn to lyrics from an early age, and at the same time, I've always tried to write good lyrics, but I've never put the lyrics on any of our records.
Oh, really? So you want people to either listen that intently or interpret what they think they hear.
Yeah, they can get them wrong. Often they do, and that's, we all get them wrong sometimes,
Yeah.
you know.
Well,
But,
what about the hi-fi, sci-fi Japanese version? There's one with lyrics on it, but it was clearly transcribed.
they go, so they must get some wrong.
Oh,
Yeah.
of course. I mean, you can tell English is not the first language, but they did a good try.
Oh, I love it. I don't know that I have one of those in my vault. I have to track one down.
I mean, English is my first language, but I screw up lyrics all the time. I was never a lyrics guy until the pandemic, believe it or not. I just listened to melodies. That was what got me every time, the melodies and the groove. And then lyrics were secondary. You know, I'd come back and think, oh, wow, this is actually what makes that band even that more impressive. And honestly, my kids did that for me. My youngest is a huge Beatles fan. And at 10, he knew obscure stuff about the Beatles much more than I did. And he hit me to the magic behind the Beatles, just like John, you talked about ELP, like the prog stuff. My oldest son is a huge, huge Rush fan. And I saw them a bunch of times, but for me, you know, there was always as a drummer, you get this, right? There was the argument of Neil Peart, John Bonham. Which one did you resonate with more? Who was your biggest influence? And Bonham was so guttural. You could feel everything so primal when you hear him play. You know, even though he's kind of a piece of shit as a human being, you know, but he was so incredible as a timekeeper and as a musician. Neil, you know, the professor, seemed so pained when he was playing. It looked like he was processing formulas in his head while he was playing. And so for me, I just loved the feel of Bonham. But I talked this to my kid about this a lot. I said, man, these guys like amazing prog drummers. And he said, yeah, but what were their lyrics like? And I realized, oh yeah, Neil wrote all those songs. You know, Rush was so much more sort of advanced because Neil's writing was very intelligent, and very cerebral, and very emotional for him. So my kids turn me on to lyrics, and when I start listening to stuff from you guys, um, almost all of it is relationship driven. You know, I mean, for me, the stuff that I pick up and I listen to anything, and I think, oh my god, it reminds me of my last relationship, you know? and um, and so I think from the people that I've talked to that are Dramarama fans, they connect with you because they feel this real sort of family vibe. You guys project that a lot, you know, on stage and off. I see you when you guys play shows. Immediately, you're out talking to fans, and I don't even like to call them fans because to me, people are family, and you really do have that connection with
We
people.
work for them, Kevin. Let's face
Yeah.
it. If they don't buy the tickets, we don't play. You know, we sit around at home.
But it's more than that, though. I really can tell that you appreciate them as people and not just as patrons. You know.
We're I don't think we've ever tried to be larger than life and you know, have that mystique and hide backstage and you know, try to, you know, develop this persona that isn't who we are. We, you know, Mark and I, everybody in the band, we all are fans first. You know, we buy tickets, we go to concerts. You know, I know every one of us is gutted because Charlie Watts passed away. You know, I mean, and we all paid. I've paid to see Charlie play. You know, several times. I remember the last time I went to see him. I think Marky went to see him on the last tour, so I envy that. Although I know going to
you would have envied the audience that was there.
Going to a stadium isn't my idea of fun these days, and Marky felt the same way after he went. I know, but I remember we went to go see the Bridges to Babylon tour, and I got the tickets from a friend of mine, and they were kind of far back on the floor, and we were like, and I was like, you know, it's Stones. I've seen them, you know, a bunch of times. You know, this is gonna be blah, you know. But when Mick Jagger and Ronnie Wood and Charlie Watts and Keith Richards came out on stage, I was 12 years old again. I was like, oh, it's the Stones, you know. So
Ronnie Wood is an amazing guitar player. I was impressed with him and Charlie the most, and as far as musical ability,
we are exactly the same, you know, and that's, you know, a lot of show business is smoke and mirrors, and they try to build these artists up into these, you know, larger than life figures. But you know, we're just like everybody else. And I think, like you say, the audience knows that they can come up to us and talk to us, and we'll go out and talk to them. And we don't try to, you know, put up a wall between us. And you know, and I just saw in the chat, a very good friend of ours that we grew up with, Dave Ziegler, is listening, is watching. And he's absolutely right. He mentions Freddie Mercury. Loved the Queen before, you know, before he had a mustache. I was a big fan of Freddie Mercury's. And I mean, not that I wasn't a big fan after, but once, you know, there is that little bit of elitist in me that when somebody gets really popular, you know, after Night at the Opera, it's like, oh, everybody likes them. Oh, you know, it's like, so you kind of step back, you know, and it wasn't, you know, Bowie didn't get really popular, at least where we grew up, till Let's Dance, you know. Until then, he was kind of, you know, he wasn't on the radio that much. You know, he had a couple of hits, but he wasn't as well known as he became. So, you know, I you know, Roxy Music's another one that I meant to mention. But
you know, Dave, Dave Ziegler in the chat, I was gonna point out, you mentioned that you watched John learn "Mood for Dave" by Yes on guitar. That was your first when you were first learning how to play guitar.
That was Marky, yeah. Marky played guitar since I remember. There's a picture floating around of Mark playing guitar and me holding the microphone, and we must be like 8 or 9 years old or something.
Yeah. I've had this baby my whole life. This is family.
That's a silver line. That's from the 40s, Marky.
1930s.
Oh 30s. My God! Let's hear that.
It was last tuned in the 1930s.
Okay. Ooh. Yeah, tuning's overrated, right?
Tuning's overrated. Who cares?
That's right, man. You know, Tony Hughes, as a buddy of mine, he's in the chat here too, and he said you're one of his favorite bands, and he talks about that's one of the reasons that you guys are badass is that you're so approachable. You know, that you really don't feel like you know, any person that's out there in the band or in the crowd is lower than you. You know, and
oh hell no. Hell no.
You know, but so if you think about how fortunate, and I'm glad that you guys, you know, have that kind of humility. I feel so fortunate that every time we do all these shows together, the only time that we're all not out talking to other people that have come out to see us is when we're hanging backstage. And there really is this family community, you know, and I'm on that, like that, you know,
it's full on team. No, it's not a competition. Everyone supports each other.
Yeah, it's definitely a family affair. You know, Mark, Peter, and I graduated high school together. Class of '79, Wayne Hills, and the new guys have both been playing with us since the '90s. So they're going on. They're both getting their 25-year pins.
Nice.
You know, it is. You gotta. Nobody's ever auditioned for the band. You know, it's like, you know, the guy's got to be cool. You got to get along with them. You know.
You have to see Planet of the Apes at Preakness Theater in 1968.
That's right. We saw that. We saw 2001. We saw
the Omega Man.
The Omega Man. I was just going to say, took the words right out of my mouth.
Oh, man. That's, you know.
You have to go to the Jerry Lewis Cinema right before it became the porno theater, whatever.
And notice the head starring the monkeys. That's a great movie we saw.
Oh, my God.
That corrupted me. Thankfully, corrupted me as a child.
Another thing about Mark had big brothers and sisters, so we used to raid their stash of records, you know. So that's where I learned about Alice Cooper. That's where I first heard Black Sabbath. That's where I first heard Desmond Decker, the Israelites, you know. They had the records. And so we were like,
he did have that record on Uni Records.
Yes, they did. Yeah, wow. No, your brothers and sisters.
Don't ask me what I ate yesterday, but I know that was on Uni Records.
In my musical education, Mark's big brothers and sisters were definitely, you know, turning us on to all kinds of sounds.
Well, I think like John Grunder, all those guys that hung out there, John Schlureth. I mean, it was a community where they just kind of took you around. They put you under their wing, just like that 70s movies thing.
Harry Avogadro had a drum set, remember?
He's the first guy with shoulder length hair that I saw. Him and the newspaper guy.
You know, speaking of drummers, in the chat here, somebody mentioned that the drummers that they think of are your current drummer, Tony Snow, which is one of my favorite cats on the planet, and of course, the inimitable Clem Burke played drums with you guys, as well as, of course, Blondie and Romantics. And I think Clem was actually watching you guys at the Greek last time, right? When we played there, didn't he come down to see you?
He did. He's a good friend and a great drummer. One of the best.
Yeah.
We were, as I say, we're big fans. So when DJ Rodney Bingenheimer suggested Clem Burke, I was like, well, no way. He's one of my heroes. I went to see Blondie in 78 or 79 or something at a racetrack at Belmont Racetrack in Long Island, and I went there, a young teenage boy in love with Debbie Harry, and I walked out of there a Clem Burke fan, because he's just just one of the most amazing drummers you'll ever see. So I couldn't believe it when he got in our band, and for at least a year I had to pinch myself. It was like that Wayne's World, I'm not worthy kind of thing.
Nobody plays like him. He really is a unique drummer, man. I love watching him. I missed talking to him that night, because where I watched your set from? I'm totally going to get myself in trouble, because I plan on doing it again this time. But
oh, you're in trouble? No, go ahead.
You know where I was at, Mark?
No, I have no idea. Go ahead.
I was about 200 feet above you. I climbed through the skylight on the Greek, and I climbed out over to the edge that hangs down over the stage. And so I was directly above you guys looking down, and you could see.
Was that you? I thought I saw that. Security wasn't up there.
The crow's nest.
I hope. Well, yeah, this was totally not a legal thing, and I'm sure Mo, if he's watching,
that's a scary ass place to be.
But I just, what? It was beautiful that night. I remember you could see the observatory from one side. The night was gorgeous. That night at the Greek was one of my favorite shows from so many that we've done together. And I can't believe we're doing it again next week. That's like something that was pushed back after the pandemic. And like I said at the beginning, I'm really glad that they've taken precautions to make sure that people are really, they're going to have their space, there's safety and security in terms of the, COVID. Wear your mask, guys, if you're coming. I see a ton of people that are in the chat that are going to go at the Greek. So they'll be at the Greek. Somebody, Rick Converse here, was asking about Wild Honey benefit shows. Do you any word on those?
Well, they come. The last one was the Love and Spoonful, and that was really cool, because actually the surviving members of the Love and Spoonful actually came out, and I did a song from the movie What's Up, Tiger Lily, and Sebastian played harmonica, so that was wonderful, wonderful dream come true kind of a thing. One of those weird, like you had a dream of it at one point. I was on stage and John Sebastian was playing harmonica while I was singing the song from What's Up, Tiger Lily, and so then when it happens, it's like, did I dream that, or is that real, or what? But yeah, that was cool. And Marky and I did the Kinks the year before that, which was great with Clem. Clem played drums with us, and we did a song called Shangri-La. The Wild Honey benefit shows are amazing. The Wild Honey, we've been doing Wild Honey. Wild Honey's been around since the 90s, as far as I know. I don't know if they've been around longer than that, but they've always done tribute shows, but had 20, 30 different artists come up and sing one or two songs. And I've done McCartney, I've done Harry Nilsson, Elvis Costello, the Beatles, the Kinks,
Wow.
Really cool bands that they've done.
What McCartney did you sing?
I sang the medley from Red Rose Speedway.
Wow.
Lazy Dynamite and Power Cut, and I forget what all the songs are called.
Nice.
Hold Me Tight, I think, is one of them. It's like 3 or 4 songs kind of chopped together, but it's really it's a meaningful song for me. It was fun.
Man, I think that other bands that are in these scenes, they really do revere you guys too, because of your authenticity. When you talked about not being larger than life, to me, it's more than just being approachable. When you guys go up on stage, you kind of talked about like the tab shtick, and everybody recognizes you from the hat. But when you guys are playing, it's a balls out rock and roll band, and there's a lot about the 80s that was just image driven, and well, it was like it was fortified by image and substance. But when I see you guys, even though there is a style to what you guys do, but it doesn't take a back seat to the presentation of the rock and roll. If you could sort of take you guys and put them in another band, who would you feel like is another sort of parallel that maybe you could have toured with in the day? Like you mentioned the Kinks a little bit ago, and I could see a lot of of like that being maybe a predecessor to Dramarama, in the way that they were too.
Yeah, I think we go along with almost any kind of music because we're kind of rock and roll, slight punk edge, but also very British invasion, Beatles, Stones, Who, Kinks, and a little bit of glam, 70s glam, 70s British glam, not 80s Los Angeles glam.
Yeah, T-Rex.
Come on, raise your hands.
But it's
somebody out there with a record deal. I'm tired of playing the whiskey.
Two guitars, bass, and drums. And as much as we might enjoy Yes or King Crimson or ELP or whatever, none of us are virtuosos at our instrument. We're all just banging it out. Just bashing it out. And when we go play those shows, a lot of times people don't know what they go to see their favorite bands, and they might not even know who we are. It depends what city we're in, and we go and we try to win them over, if you will, and bash them over the head with it.
Oh my God! Is that the song? Is that? No. That's usually what it is.
You know what, man? It's happened to me in every band from the era. They'll say, let's see, Animotion, what song did they sing? And then you gotta like hum a tune, and they're like, oh, that's who sings that song. Or, the Flock of Seagulls, maybe there's no time that I don't ever have to say, well, they did have other songs besides Iran, but then I'm like, I'm not going to try and defend,
Yeah, but no, they had quite a few. Space Age Love Song was huge. The More You Live, The More You Love was huge. I love Telecommunication. That was like, I actually was dancing to that at clubs before I ran, before MTV. I was digging the sounds of the Flock of Seagulls.
Was that back? Were you in Jersey then?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Because I know East Coast stuff. Flock certainly sort of was introduced there before it came to the West. But you guys both grew up in Jersey. Peter's from there as well, right? Mm-hmm. And I think he's still there now, right? Maybe that's why the technology is different for him. Yeah,
it's possible. I think, I remember another reason why the Flock was on my radar was because this guy Bill Nelson, who was in Bebop Deluxe, he produced their first records.
Okay,
I think he produced Telecommunication and their first, before Space Age, before Iran, they had records, their early stuff. And he was, if you don't know Bebop Deluxe, you're missing out on a great 70s band that never really blew up over here. But he's one of the best guitar players and best lyricists and best singers. That was my first concert. It was Bebop Deluxe with Styx and the Dictators opened up.
Oh my God! Wow, that and that was probably before Styx kind of blew. Like before Lady and all those. But back in the early
Lady, I remember they played Lady. That's the case of like you were saying, like. Who's this band? I never heard of them, Styx. And they were like, we got a new album coming out. It's called The Grand Illusion. And they played Come Sail Away and all these songs off it. And I never heard them. But then they said, here's one you might remember. And they played Lady. And I was like, oh, yeah, I remember that song, Lady. Yeah, that's Styx. Okay. Yeah. I would never, I had no idea who sang that song. But I remember that song on the radio.
The connection that people make with those songs. It is really about where they're at in their part of life, And I talked about relationships earlier. How I said, man, anything reminds me of the last relationship, and kind of the intensity of that. The intensity of the song, but when you guys go back and you think about those records, the records that you were grabbing from Mark's, Big Brothers and Sisters. And did you kind of have a vision of wanting to be like, say, I've talked to a lot of people who've said, Beatles, 1964, Ed Sullivan Show, that was the game changer, right? I wanted to be Ringo. Was there like a particular record that you could sort of fantasize about? Okay, the end game is that John Easdale wants to be the singer for Styx.
No, when I was little, like I said, I wanted to be Mickey Dolenz. I wanted to play drums and sing, and as I got older, and I just knew I was never that good of a drummer that I was going to be the next Carl Palmer or Bill Bruford or whatever. And really, I it's kind of like being honest, not being a good enough athlete to be in the NFL or the Major League Baseball. I never ever in a million years, and Mark, you can either agree or disagree, but I never thought we were gonna make records and 40 years later we're gonna have our 40th anniversary next year.
No, definitely.
No way in a million years that I think I was going to even make a record. I remember when we made a record,
after the 90s we were done, but we kept going.
Yeah, no, it's crazy.
That's the bizarre part about it.
Never in a million years did I expect that I would make, have quote unquote a musical career. It was something we did because we loved it, and it was something that we did because we were big fans. We all worked in record stores and, used our money from our day jobs to pay for to go in the studio and make a record, but
that's how that happened. So
figured just like our wives and girlfriends, our friends and girlfriends, we didn't have wives yet at the time, but we were doing it for ourselves. We weren't doing it, to make it big or even to make it. I didn't think there was a possibility of that happening. It was a labor of love.
Well, I mean, again, the authenticity behind that is really probably what helped advance the career a little bit. But you mentioned taking your day job money and putting a record out. Was this back in Jersey when you put out your first album?
Mm-hmm. Well, okay. we first we put a 3-song 45 EP, and then we put out a 5-song 12-inch EP, and then a French label put out our first album, and that was our big wow. We got an album, we got an album out in France. Wow.
Yeah. How did they find you?
A DJ read about us in a magazine called The Trouser Press, which reviewed our first single.
Okay. And
he picked up a copy and started playing on his show, and then he put us in touch with the label in Paris. That was kind of like, it was called New Rose. And they didn't put out really many French bands, but they put out the Replacement's first couple of records, and they put out the Cramps, and they put out Johnny Thunder's solo records, and all these weird underground American artists, and they put out our record, which still to this day I don't know why, but
I could totally see that parallel. I mean, really, the Johnny Thunder stuff, aside from, the completely tuned out heroin, vibe. I mean, I really see that authenticity, that punk rock driven rock and roll sound.
Oh, yeah. The New York Dolls and David Johansen, really big influence on me and my songwriting and my performing style. I think, I used to go see, as Dave Ziegler would say, David Joe and the show place in Dover. I had to borrow a fake ID to get into to see for my first David Johansen concert, and the Cramps opened up.
Oh,
wow. I was at that.
Were you not together though? You guys didn't go together?
No, well, I think we did.
We did with Steve Mercurio.
I ended up having a police officer walk me into the place because I didn't have an ID.
Oh my God!
Mark didn't have his ID, but he was old enough, and so we went. They sent us over to the police station, which was right next door, and they said, "Well, you go get a police officer." And the cop, for some reason, took a liking to us because we went over to the police station and said, "Could you look up his birth certificate? Because he's old enough." And they said, "Who did they send you over here?" And so the cop went over and walked him in. And
it was like right out of a movie. I'd never been in a go-go bar like that before. That was awesome.
Hilarious. And yeah, the stuff that dreams are made of.
Wow.
I mean, it really could have been a scene in a movie in a weird way. I was out of that 74 Al Bundy family Plymouth Duster.
You know, it's
I
interesting that
remember that car very well.
you talked about a scene right out of a movie. I had Tawny Katane on the show just prior to her passing, unfortunately, and but I talked to her about who would play Julie Katane. Her, Julie's a real name. Who would play you in the movie about yourself? She mentioned Christina Applegate because they were together. They worked together on Married with Children. You mentioned Al Bundy. There were a lot of really interesting and pivotal and beautiful moments in that conversation, but it made me think a lot about legacy. Like what we want to be remembered for. Is legacy important to either of you guys?
I don't think about it.
Okay.
I mean, honestly, when I'm gone, I don't have that many people that I talk to, so I don't view myself as any active force. And I don't think it's really that important. But hey, look, if someone can learn guitar from something that I did or just move the music along, that's what I'm most happy about. Besides legacy, I played the riff on Anything. I think that's going to be around for a long time. That's my legacy.
Absolutely.
I am amazed, if you Google anything on or YouTube or whatever, there are dozens of people doing their version, on ukulele, on acoustic guitar, a young band, it's amazing. And then like Storm doing it on that show, and Buck Cherry did it in that movie Road Trip, and Janny Lane and Warrant used to do it. It's just weird to me, so that's really miraculous. And yeah, the musical will be our legacy. I don't know that there's ever going to be, certainly I don't expect there ever to be a biopic, there's going to be no, I don't worry about who's going to play me in the movie, but, I think the music is the idea that people still listen to the music from the 80s it's ridiculous. And yeah, I was blown away in the 90s when there was such a thing as classic rock radio, and I even wrote a song about it. It's like, where does, I couldn't believe that people were listening to music that was 20 years old, because like in the 70s, you weren't, unless you were like a greaser and were, doing the 50s thing, you weren't listening to the music from the 50s. And certainly in the 60s, they weren't listening to the music of the 40s.
Right.
Every generation had their own music up until the 80s. And then there was this thing like, in the 80s and 90s, there was that 50s thing again. And people were dressing rockabilly, and then people were into swing music. Right. And all along, Jimi Hendrix has never gone out of style. Led Zeppelin has never gone out of style. And that stuff's 50 years old.
Right.
That's like people in the 50s listening to, I don't know what they were listening to, the Zeros, the 1900s, like Edison cylinders, it's like, you didn't listen to music that was 50 years old. In the 70s, we weren't swinging to the music of the 20s,
Well, speak for yourself.
Oh, it's
the love will get you if you don't watch out. I think that's what the song is.
Yeah, no, music from the Little Rascals, so that's a different story. Right. But yeah, no, it's bizarre. It's insane that people are listening. And now with Spotify and YouTube and everything, you can listen to everything. You're not limited to what the shelf space on the record at the record store can hold. It's like the biggest record stores couldn't carry every Rolling Stones album. They could only carry like the newest one and the best of and Hot Rocks and Get Your Yayas Out and 4 or 5 titles, not all 25 or whatever. And now you can get every record by every band ever, and it's right there.
Internet streaming really has made music better in a weird way, I think.
There are pros and cons, right? There are curses and blessings.
I like to be able to discover stuff. That's my whole thing.
And then see that the interesting thing about that, I love that Terry Curry is still watching this from Music Millennium. What Spotify and those kind of services have done, at least a little bit, is that they replaced that guy behind the counter that said, hey, you came in, you bought that Hot Rocks album, but you know what? if you like that record, you know, it'd be really cool. You should check out, you know, that the referral from the guy, the expert at the music store, for me was my favorite dude, right? Because you'd walk in there, you'd smell the smell of a record store, right? I mean, you could smell those distinctive smells in the vinyl, and look at the album jackets and look at liner notes, and then have the dude maybe not thinking you're going to steal something. He actually wants to help you by making a recommendation. You know, I wish that I could say that Spotify is really interested in what you might be interested in, but I think a lot of those services are like, you know, just like shoveling more stuff at you because, you know, our attention span is pretty short, right?
Oh yeah, no, it's all, and it's not a person making the choice; it's an algorithm, you know.
Right. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but the thing is, there was books, and you could have a library of books, and then there was records, and you could curate a library of records. But that was it.
Yeah.
There were no videos yet, you know,
Right.
so you couldn't curate movies. You couldn't curate, you know, video games, which nobody had even invented yet. It was like music was pretty much all that you had, that you could develop a collection. And, you know, I mean, I remember carrying around my box of 45s, and you know, everybody would come to somebody's basement, and everybody would bring their box of 45s, or else if they had that little circle thing with the handle that you twisted, you know, and they'd bring their 45s, and everybody would take a turn and say, here, try this, here, listen to this, you know. It was a fun thing to turn other people on to songs, you know. And definitely that guy at the record store, I was that guy for the longest time, you know. That's where we started the band, in the basement of a record store.
Really?
Me, Mark, and Chris, the bass player, Chris Carter, who's now he's a host of Breakfast with the Beatles on Sirius XM and also on KLOS in Los Angeles. He's like the Beatles expert now, and he was the bass player, and he owned the record store. And I used to I pretty much moved in, and I spent, you know, 12 hours a day there, 7 days a week. And then we started the band in the basement, and Marky played guitar, Chris played bass, I played drums and sang like Mickey Dolenz.
Oh, wow. That's great, man. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, what was it? We
yeah,
recorded on a 2-track, right? Then we have a 2-track reel to reel where we recorded some
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah. There was a reel to reel downstairs, and we started fooling around with that.
Only of the junkiest quality at that point. But
I still have some cassettes of some of those tunes. They're not as bad as you'd expect, but yeah, it was you know, it was our passion. It was what we ate and slept and you know, breathed it, you know, and that's all we cared about was rock and roll.
God,
And,
man.
yeah.
Well, you know what? I mean, the only difference I think between then and now, right, is that it's a lot more expensive to pay our mortgage and pay our bills, right? You know, but you still, if you're like me, I'm so grateful that I can help supplement my life with music. And yeah, you know, because I mean, I live to play, you know, I mean, I just, to have a year and a half off where we didn't have gigs was a really difficult thing in my psyche, you know, and I talked to a lot of musicians about this, that a lot of people went through identity crisis, right? Where what they did is who they are, right? And
Yeah, that's what defines them. Sure.
sure. And that was a tough thing to have to sort of rediscover about what it is that makes you you. And some people have, you know, to sound cliche, have pivoted during this time and figured out other ways to, you know, sort of either make a living or at least find some sort of other identity. But for the most part, I mean, I think it's the same way with theater actors. You know, any people that really, you know, you think about all these people that were struggling to get even an off-Broadway show, you know, they're actors, and they finally get to that point, right, where they've moved to New York, they bought that, you know, $3,000 a month studio apartment, and you know, they're getting ready to jump on stage, and then boom, the pandemic hits, and you know, so just put your life on hold, back to waiting tables again for, you know, a year and a half. But
yeah, good luck on waiting tables too at that point.
right, yeah,
You
no
couldn't
restaurants.
even. There were no tables to wait. You had to.
Right,
You had
right.
to go get it delivered.
Yeah, man. I just was kind of pointing out that it's not just us musicians, right, that had the identity hit, but I know that for a lot of people in the world, you know, they've really suffered. But I'm grateful that there are these little pockets, these windows where we get to go out and do it. You know, the the few gigs that we've got together coming up, I'm really excited for. You did that first Lost 80s show over in Catalina. I saw that you guys had that gig. Was that your first gig back?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
First time in a boat too, I might add.
Really? Okay. Were you one of the ones that got sick there, Marky?
No, but I got to see the fireworks display. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, that can be a tough ride over to
I have
Catalina,
never
man.
seen human beings turn green. I didn't realize it was possible, but it really is.
No, they were green, that's for sure.
That's a tough one, man.
Our good friend Bruce says he was that record store guy, and as much as I love streaming, as much as I love YouTube, and as much as I love being able to go, I really do miss the fact that I used to have 5 record stores within 5 minutes of my house, and now I don't. And it really kind of the one thing about the computers and started with Napster and everything that came from Napster, it really did shut the record store business down. Not the music business, but the record store business really
Sure.
took a hit.
Yeah. No, Terry that's here in the chat. I know that he's on board of directors, I think, for the Independent Record Store Coalition. And Terry, correct me if I'm wrong with that, but what he does a lot of times is he gathers together with these guys around the country, where they look at how to be sustainable.
They're the ones who do Record Store Day and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. They just had one. In fact, I just played Customer Appreciation Day last Saturday with Wilkinson Blades, this great band, which reminds me a lot of you guys.
Nice.
Actually, they're a really cool band that asked me to sit in with them for a set.
I love that name.
Yeah, they're cool guys. But playing this show, Terry honors the community in a big way. There's they always have. He says
Sims.
it's the
Sims, the Coalition of Independent Music Stores.
There you
go.
Okay.
No, I'm very familiar with that organization.
So the great thing is that there's that community is kind of looking out for each other, right? They're still trying to stay sustainable. I was just in Springfield, Illinois, and I'm trying to think of that damn record store. It was amazing, and watching the way the owners of these record stores, they developed this really interesting character. I mean, you have to be so, to weather that storm, man. I mean, you've got to have thick skin and a strong constitution, or, somebody that has a lot of money behind you. And that's rarely the case, So I applaud them just the way
records, at least when I was in business, is a very, very low markup. Back then, a record cost you paid like $7 or $8 for a record. You bought wholesale, it was like $5 or $6. So you made like $1, maybe $2 on a record. It wasn't a high markup kind of a deal, at all.
Yeah. Nobody's getting rich.
No, not at all. And Rick Converse wants to know, where was the record store that Chris Carter owned that we started in? It was in Wayne, New Jersey. We're from Wayne, New Jersey. We all grew up in Wayne, New Jersey. Well, at least me, Mark, and Peter grew up in Wayne, New Jersey, and it was in Wayne, New Jersey, on Route 23. And there's still a record store there. It's called the Sound Exchange, one of the best record stores in the world.
Actually, it's very
not to take anything away from Mr. Carrier.
Yeah, no, it's all right. I just realized, and I hate to do this to you, Mark, because I can't think of who might play your character in the movie that they make about you. But I recognize to where I see John Easdale, without a doubt, Josh Brolin is going to be playing your character, man. Yeah, that really is you, isn't it? It's your doppelganger. I don't think I've ever seen.
I love that guy.
He's amazing.
He's Thanos.
Thanos.
I have no idea who that is, but
no country for old men. That's the Johnny.
He's great in that. I just saw a movie called Sicario with him, which I'd never seen, and he's great in that too.
You guys are movie guys. Do you get out and watch movies when you're on the road?
Oh, big time! I'm a big movie. I'm a big fan of going to the theater and seeing a movie. Although I'll watch one on my phone, I'll watch one on my television. But I am a big fan of going to the theater and seeing it on the big screen. Yeah,
man, I miss that too. That's one of my favorite things to do with the band when we travel to go see a movie, especially when you're overseas. If you can find like you're in England, and you find a good theater that has a kick-ass Hollywood movie. It's nice to be out of place. How about you, Mark? You're falling asleep there. Are you a movie guy?
Yeah, of course. A lot of old stuff though. What got me through the pandemic a lot was 1950s horror films.
Really?
The shtick, yeah, because it was just so ridiculous. You just had to watch. And also Channel 13.3 on digital Tenet. There's this classical movie, so it's a lot of cool stuff on there. But you asked me the title, for the life of me, I can't think of it.
It has to be back like in the 70s for you to remember, right? Yeah.
Well, no, we're talking earlier than that, the 50s and the 40s, stuff like that.
You're not that old, buddy. I know that. Yeah.
No, but that's what I've gotten to really discover. I love the comedy back then, you know.
Yeah.
Or that time frame. Some really interesting stuff because they couldn't fake it. They had to wing it and get through it all.
Right. You know, it was true acting, not a million takes. I love that Anna is here. Anna Snow is watching and chiming in the chat. Since we don't get Tony, at least Anna's here, his better half. So Anna, she said, we saw End of the Century in Chicago when it came out, when you guys were all together.
The Ramones movie.
Yeah, and Attack of the 50-Foot Guitar. Yeah. When you guys get together too, your rhythm section, they're some of my favorite dudes, right? I mean, I remember we all did a show, I think, in Buffalo, New York, right? That was a gig that we did
for Benny Mardones.
That's the gig. That's right.
And that was an awesome gig, by the way. There was a lot of cheesecake to go around.
Yeah. Stanley Tucci. That's a good one for Mark. I like this. Thanks, Bruce. Yeah, I could see you as Stanley Tucci for sure.
How about from Taxi? We'll get that guy. What's
you got the Stanley Tucci hair right there.
That's true. On the flight
back, Alex.
On that flight back, I was sitting with Mike D, and we were talking about what's next. Right, we didn't have Lost 80s gigs for a little while. And he said, you live in Seattle, right? I said, well, no, I'm Portland, Northwest. And he goes, oh, yeah, I'm playing Seattle tomorrow night. I said, you guys are flying to L.A., but then you're going to do that gig? And he said, no, I'm with my other band. I said, what's this band? He said, Halford. And I said, like Rob Halford from Judas Priest? He said, yeah, man, I've done that gig for 10 years. And I'm like, what? And I had no idea about his legacy with Lizzie Borden. And then the Halford gig, I took the train up and I saw him play that gig. And unbelievable. Have you guys seen him do his metal thing?
Hell yeah.
It's I gotta drop F-bombs. I mean, I could not believe how badass he was in that band.
We worked at a magazine together when we were both on hiatus kind of from playing rock and roll and in the 90s. And then he was he had a metal background, and I had my background of whatever you call it, garage rock.
Yeah.
When I started, doing gigs and I needed a bass player, I was like, you want to, he had he had kind of like stopped playing. I think, he'd had a bad experience. He was like jamming, and him and his guitar player buddy were going to look like they were going to get a gig. And then his guitar player buddy kind of jerked him over and took the gig and didn't bring him along or something. So I think he just kind of, he had cooled on the whole idea of it. And I kind of coaxed him to get back up there and get back on that horse and let's take a ride. And so now we're doing it. But yeah, no, that's his roots. That's his, if you want to see a little Mikey, go watch that Decline of Western Civilization Part 2.
That's right. The Lizzie Borden days.
Yeah.
I definitely went back and
watch some, or go on YouTube and watch some really old Lizzie Borden videos. It's entertaining, and there's also some good Halford live shows with him. He's unstoppable. And if you come see us, he's him and Tony are the Thunder Brothers. They really, make the difference between us just being a band and us being a band,
Yeah. Oh, it's I may be biased for sure, but the fact that both of those guys have this sort of it's unexplainable. I mean, it's unspoken. They don't, even if they're not watching each other, that band is so solid with those guys as the roots, as the base. I watched, as a drummer, right? I mean, it really is important for me, right? When I see a rhythm section and I think of like the biggest bands in the world that had really strong rhythm sections, you guys are there, Tony, even if, Tony's wife says Thunder Brothers. I think, I'm envious sometimes when I watch you and thinking, all right, Pondo and we need to cut loose a little bit more, man. I miss the organic vibe that you guys have, But
there aren't too many, there aren't too many like that, John Paul Jones and Bonzo really kind of locked in. Entwistle and Moon really kind of locked in.
yeah,
Bill and Charlie really locked in. And I, no offense to the new guy in the Rolling Stones who's been there for 30 years, but it's just not the same without Bill Wyman, for me anyway.
yeah, right. No,
And
that
to the new drummer of Rolling Stones, no pressure.
yeah,
Oh
man.
gosh.
I mean that brought up the legacy thing, and I was talking to another friend of mine this morning when I found out about Charlie that, if you think about the influences, that Charlie's had, and even like every Stones album you listen to, you can always tell it's Charlie Watts on drums, and there's just this sound that nobody else played like. Um, for me, because you mentioned Mark that legacy isn't that important. I was with my father this last week in Montana. My dad's 87. He had an art show opening, and it was amazing to me to see all of his contemporaries, all these artists that showed up that I hadn't seen in 40 years,
Uh-huh.
and talking about the influence that he had on them. And it was not at all something that my dad sort of strove to get any accolades or legacy. It was
Well,
just
he
for
must have been really good at what he was, and
for sure.
convey his artists. Yeah.
And for me, that was the neat thing, is to see that it was nothing contrived. It wasn't his plan, right, to be recognized as this artist. But as many people were talking about the influence he had as a teacher, he was an art teacher for a long time in high school, and he was the parental figure for a lot of kids in the 70s that just didn't have that at home,
Mhm.
and so for me, I thought that I could only hope to have that kind of impact on somebody, at the end of my days, to look back at
Well,
this
you
time.
speak more as a father. I'm just a single adult person. I got
Is
no.
that where you grew up, Kev?
It is, yeah,
Oh,
Montana.
neat.
Yeah,
You
but I
know,
mean,
that's the whole thing. When you have kids, that's your legacy. I would
The
think.
thing of Charlie is Charlie didn't grow up listening to rock drummers. Charlie was a jazz guy.
yeah, right.
He
You
liked
can hear
that,
that.
man. He dug that stuff. And if you listen to the Charlie Watts big band records that he put out a couple, you can hear what Charlie was about.
For
When
sure.
what he loved. It wasn't Earl Palmer or who were the drummer in Elvis's band.
Right. I mean, but you can hear that influence, right? The jazz influence on the Stones. You hear the swing, the same way that, like Ringo's swing, playing it as a left
Absolutely,
drum,
both of those guys. Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of rock drummers, I think, don't give those guys credit, Charlie and Ringo, as much credit as they deserve for how unique their playing is. Because a lot of guys that I hear that might dog them don't have a unique sound in their own playing, And if you try to cop Ringo spot on, if you try to play those songs, it's so much more difficult than most people think to get that little lilt. There's a little tiny swing. If you do it left-handed, you're more likely to be able to pull it off, But I think, yeah, I think. Oh, you know what? This is interesting. Yeah, Jeff Rasp says Steve Jordan should have a great rapport with Keith.
He
Steve.
was an expensive wino.
Oh, yeah. God. And I thank you, Anna, by the way, for the comment about my dad. Um, how about you guys in your relationship with parents? Were they supportive
Yes,
of you
we've had
musically?
parents. Exactly.
Yeah. Were they supportive musically?
Not until after I don't know. I can't say for Mark. Well, Marky's gave him the guitar, and
My father.
Marky bought him they bought him his SG and his amplifier and stuff. And my
Poor
parents
boy.
gave me drum lessons and bought me a drum set when I was when I was a little kid. When I kept doing it though, like teen years and late teens and early 20s, I don't think they had any idea what we were up to. And then I moved to California. The band moved to California. We had albums out and stuff. My parents were kind of like, "When are you going to come home? When are you going to get a real job? What are you going to do?" And
That's
it
what
wasn't
my
until
parents
we were like, we appeared on the Pat Sajak TV show, which was he went up against Carson and I don't know who else had shows. He was on CBS, and before Letterman, before the Late Show.
Yeah.
Pat Sajak had a talk show on CBS, and we were on that. And then my parents were like, "Oh, I think we were on our third record before
Really?
my parents came to see the band play."
That sucks.
But
Wow.
it's just I there was that 10, 15-year period between, what is it, 15? What's that quote that I'm going to paraphrase Mark Twain? When I was 15, my father was the stupidest man in the world, and now I'm 25, and I'm amazed how much he's learned in those 10 years.
Right.
I had that going on with my parents from 15 to like 25, 27. I just, I didn't, I had, they had, I had no use for them,
Yeah.
and so that's as much my fault as theirs. So after that, they made a big difference. They used to come to every show. My dad still came to shows. He recently passed in March, and I think COVID really slowed him down. Before COVID, he was on 4 different bowling teams, and he was driving everywhere. He was going places and doing stuff. And
he moved, man. That guy traveled. I couldn't believe how much he would travel.
He would come to our shows. He came to our concerts, and if he couldn't make it to the midnight shows at the nightclub, he'd come to sound check, just to check it out. Yeah, he was totally cool, and he totally supportive. And when I was going through his stuff, he saved everything ever, every newspaper. Not just like articles and stuff, but like if there was an ad for our show, he saved that. I mean, he had everything. So I think he was definitely proud, and yeah, I didn't mean to make it sound like they weren't supportive. It was just, there was that period where I kind of checked out, it was like, I regret that, I was a jerk.
Well, Mark, speaking of regrets, man, do you have anything, you look back and you think, God, you know what? I really regret this decision in my life. Anything like that?
No, because I think life's about adventure and experience, and you do the things you do, and sometimes you pass. I mean, if I have any regrets, it's how I lived as a teenager and just how self-entitled I was.
Yeah.
Like my parents gave everything to me, and in a way, I didn't really appreciate it. I was just young, and I deserve this, or whatever. Family cars. I must have put more dents in those cars than, I don't know, fill in the blank.
We were definitely spoiled. We were, lower middle class suburban kids, but our parents, gave us everything. They really did.
They really sacrificed for us, and
we were that generation where they were the war babies, and we were the baby boomers. Born in the very early '60s, and yeah, my dad was a mailman, but he worked another job, and we never wanted for anything.
They wanted you to have life better than me.
You could raise a family at that time, where it was, my parents paid $32,000 for my house.
Oh yeah,
think about that.
Times have changed that way for sure.
And you can let your 3-year-old run out of the house and, I'm going to my friend John's, and knocking on the door, and you see the mother in a bathrobe, and it's that angler child who's coming by again, and we got to send him home.
That's. I think they still say that backstage at some of these shows we're at, but
that's usually because I'm dozing off at the end of the night. I can't keep up with you youngsters. I'm an old man. Give me a break here.
I think I aged about 40 years during the pandemic. Let me tell you, man, it's definitely kicked my butt a little bit, but I'm excited. I'm excited to get back out. I really am. It looked like Peter was really excited to be on this thing too, because I think that guy he looks like he's charged up and ready to rock these shows.
The Greek Theater, man, what a place to play! What an amazing place to play! I'm so proud of it. Anytime I can do it, I'm just thrilled.
Yeah, man. Well, I'll be watching you from 200 feet above. If you in the mid set, right when you start Last Cigarette.
Well, try not to have any diarrhea, okay?
Yeah.
Look up.
you look up and now I mean this, right on your set list. Say reminder for everybody to
I'm
stop.
wearing an umbrella above just in case.
We'll wave and say, hi, Kevin.
I'll drop a drumstick right
Either,
now in your hand.
either that or a huge hat, bigger
It's
than
Friday night, September 3rd, right, at the Greek Theater?
That's right, man. Yeah, if you don't have a ticket, folks, you're out of luck because it's sold out. But hopefully, you can.
Hey, Kevin, it sounds like
buddy.
we're getting near the end. Can I just hawk something real quick?
I hope so.
Yeah, I made a pandemic CD. It's Once More You'll Be in the City of Angels. Mark Englert. Just look for it online. And by the way, this is screenshots of the Greek Theater.
Here, hold on. It's
2019.
I'm gonna get. Hold on. I'm gonna make you bigger. Hold on one sec.
Make me larger than life. I command.
Put that right up in front of your screen. So
that's from anything at the Greek Theater.
There it is, right there. That's the money shot right there. You can see the whole thing.
Once more.
And Tony Snow is back there. I told him Tony was embarrassed. No one would recognize him on the cover, so he had nothing to worry about.
God, he is so humble, man. I love that guy. I miss him here. I miss Peter, Mike D, Tony Snow. Hopefully, when we do the Greek show, I'm going to do a little live backstage where we can have all 5 of you guys together, right? We'll do a little huddle.
You're going to do a line? That's the 70s, man. That's the 80s. Man. That's really the 80s, doing lines backstage.
Oh my God! And I'm grateful that those days are behind me now, which is really nice. But I tried to make up for lost time for a little while. So, if you guys are hip to it, I'll do a little All Access live broadcast from back.
Live.
Whatever.
Yes. Yeah, I think that'll be fun. So folks, if you got here late, listen to this. Anna's got a story for Tony. All right. So she says, when Tony was in kindergarten, teachers said he was hyper ADD. So mom and dad got him a drum set. The logical thing to do for a kid that hits on things, that hits kids on top of their heads with pencils during reading time. Nice. Yeah. My thing too was kind of like that. I was a sort of just an angry teenager. I would live in the woods in a cabin in Montana. And I was so far away from people and just pissed that my parents moved me away from everyone. So drums were the perfect thing to not, punch holes in the walls. And so I'm just taking it all out on the backline drum kits that we have on stage, So listen, man, John, Mark, I appreciate, you bringing your Josh Brolin and Stanley Tucci to the show. And if you guys want to look for some Dramarama goods, they're at dramaramastore.com. That link down at the bottom. If you got here late, I would love it if you go to the link that's shown here, youtube.com/allaccesslive with Kevin Rankin, or you can actually just go to accesskevin.com and I'll have this archived in about 15 minutes.
How do you spell Kevin, by the way? No, I got it. Never mind. Go ahead.
Yeah, you know what? I think we're missing the heckle from Mark Englert this long time during the pandemic, so you'll get to see it on the Greeks stage. You gonna give him a mic, John?
It's going to be wonderful, wonderful, wonderful time. Thank you so much for having us on, Kevin.
I missed the hell out of you, man.
There were no awkward pauses, and we weren't at a loss for we could talk for another 2 hours, I think. But thank you so much for having us on.
You're some of my favorite peeps, man. I cannot wait to rock with you next week. I'll have a mask, but do I get to give you the hugs before we play so I'm not super sweaty?
Well, you don't go on the list, and you guys are the headliners. We're the lowly. We're the ones who'll be sweaty while you're still nice and dry.
No, man, I sweat even at sound check. Prairie Prince. We did those gigs with the Tubes. Remember at Prairie said, I said, dude, I know it's a sound check, but you should get a fan out there on stage. It is so hot. And he goes, man, the only time I'm sweaty on these gigs is when you hug me.
Please hug us, Kevin. Please.
There's another drummer, man. That guy's the best.
He's like Clem, man. Nobody plays like him.
Yeah,
he's
solid.
And just a prince of a guy too, So
he lives up to his name for sure.
That's the truth. Yeah, man. We're fortunate to have him in our crew. Anna Snow, thank you for being a champ. All you guys in the chat were really great, and thanks for your stories about Dramarama early days. Man, accesskevin.com is going to have this in 10 minutes. John Easdale, Mark Englert, I love you guys. Peter, man, I'm sorry that you couldn't get through. And Mike Davis, Tony Snow, you were missed, but we enjoyed talking about you anyway.
I got a suggestion. Let's get them on another time. Just so
Let's do it.
They can chat.
Part 2. Yeah, just but when we're on stage, it'll be fun at the Greek, right?
Excellent.
All right, you guys, have a great week, and I'll see you guys in about a week and a half.
Yeah, buddy. Travel safe.
Thanks.